All right, guys. The final score is stepping outside of the box tonight. We've done interviews with basketball players, we've done football players, we've done baseball players, sports collectors. We're stepping outside the box. I'm going to go to a guy that I think is the expert on rock music right now. I mean, if you talk about the 80s hair bands, this guy knows it. You talk about the rock scene today, this guy knows it. And he has got his own podcast. He's the host of Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. And this is the guy I go to, and I know I aggravate him. This is the guy I go to when I have questions about something going on in the rock world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Mitch LaFon. Welcome to the show, Mr. LaFon.
Good day, but pleasure to be here. I'm always happy to talk rock, and of course, when I'm not rock talking, I guess, since that's the name of the show, I follow sports immensely. Now, I have to say, I am a Redskins fan, but because I've been sort of caught up in the NHL action, I haven't been following the training camps and stuff. But once they hit the field, you know, end of August, beginning of September, and we get down to the nitty gritty. I'll be there, and I'll be on top of all the news. But yeah, great to be here. By the way,
it's probably a good thing you didn't follow training camp because one of your starting linebacker the first day of camp tore his ACL out for the year. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, I think I saw something about that.
Reuben Foster.
Yeah, I think I saw a quick thing on that. Now, you know, listen, I'm up in Canada, so our sports coverage these last months has been Raptors, Maple Leafs, and then hockey. So the football news. But you know what? This weekend, by the way, is the start of the Canadian Football League. So
yeah, you know, I haven't really gotten
Montreal Alouettes.
Yeah, is that your team? Now, do you follow the Alouettes much?
I will admit to being a very fair weather fan. I'm not a huge fan of the Canadian game. I don't like the 3 downs.
Right.
I do like the larger field. I have to say that the larger field makes for more exciting action because it's a lot more open and it makes the passing a little more exciting. And there's a couple of things I'd like to see brought to the American game. Like, you know, when you send a punt or whatever into the end zone and the American, you just sort of kneel in the end zone and that's it. That drives me crazy. I like the excitement of having to run it out and having to make a play. And if you don't, you give up a point. Fine.
Right. That's pretty cool there, though. I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But, you know, then, of course, the folks that run the league are going to say, well, player safety and blah, 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 and they're going to get hit and there's going to be concussion, so you can't, you know, whatever. But
what do you think about this XFL, Vince McMahon's football league? Because there's a lot of we've been talking about it. I have two actual shows I do, and one I do with another guy. We've been talking about looking at some of these rules in the XFL, like the overtime rules. It's kind of like a hockey shootout. You got the offense for one team going against the defense on one side, and then at the other end of the field, you got the offense versus the defense. When they go into overtime, they'll play it that way. There's actually 44 guys on the field at one time, and they're just going back and forth, kind of like a shootout. If I guess it'll go down to whoever gets the most points, whoever scores the most in that certain like a shootout period. It sounds kind of cool to me. I'll watch it. I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, it sounds cool to me, but Vince tried this league 15, 20 years ago, and it was a disaster. And then there was what was the one that came up and disappeared after 8 weeks? American football, whatever it was called.
The AAF.
Yeah. So honestly, I just don't think you can compete with the NFL, and I don't think, regardless of what rules you put in. I mean, how many leagues have we seen go by the wayside? The USFL, the AA, blah, blah, the CFL. Remember when the CFL had a team in Las Vegas and in, where was the other team? Birmingham? No, Baltimore? You just can't compete. The NFL is the only game in town and always will be.
You remember the World Football League back in the 70s?
Well, I remember what was there was a World Football League that had the Montreal Machine and had the Rhine Fire. What was that one?
That was oh gosh, that was kind of like the
NFL Feeder League.
Yeah, the Europe League, NFL Europe. That's what it was, because it was just pretty much like a AAA AAA baseball for football is what it was. That were the Rhine Fire. We actually had a team in my area. It was the Raleigh Durham. I think it was the Skyhawks. That was in the early '90s, I believe. That was what it was, and you didn't really see many come out of that league. And I do remember I was a big football card collector back then, and they had like a set. I believe I still have the NFL Europe. They had another. It was a World League, and I don't know if it was the World Football League.
Yeah, I have it. I looked it up. It's the World League of American Football, and you're right. You had the Raleigh Durham Skyhawks, the Sacramento Surge, Amsterdam Admirals, Barcelona Dragons, etc., Frankfurt Galaxy. Yeah, that was good league, man.
Yeah,
I had season tickets.
It was fun. It was fun to have a team in Raleigh. It was, to have a local team, because the closest. I don't know. We're kind of in the middle between Washington and Charlotte. Charlotte will probably be a little bit closer to us, but not by much. I've actually, like I said, my mom's a diehard Redskins fan. A few years back, I think it was on her bucket list to go see a Redskins home game, and I took her, and to see the look on her face when she stepped out into and could see the actual inside the stadium, it made it all worthwhile. She has just loved the Redskins for many years, and it was great. It was great to go to a Redskins game, even though I'm a Steelers fan.
Yeah, Redskins are on my bucket list too, actually, quite frankly. But
actually,
I haven't been. I've seen a lot of games in Washington. The Bullets back in the time before they became the Wizards, and I saw a Capitals game, but I have not seen a Redskins game ever.
The guy that helps me on one of my shows actually put in for Redskins season tickets when he was a senior in high school, and ended up getting them 12 years later. They called him and told him, "You've got season tickets." So he's got season tickets to the Redskins games now. And I'm like, he said, "Well, I'm going to go." He lives in New York. He said, "Well, I'll probably go to 2 games this year." I'm like, dude, you don't know. You're wasting those tickets. Anyway, all right, so I have to ask you now, were you pulling for St. Louis or Boston in the Stanley Cup?
Oh, easily St. Louis. It's funny because I have a whole bunch of St. Louis Blues shirts, and if you look back on some of my pictures with some of the rock stars, you'll see me wearing them. And I was wearing one today, and people are like, "Oh, you jumped on the bandwagon."
You're a fan.
No. It's like, I've had these shirts for 4 or 5 years now. I mean, mind you, I bought them for 2 reasons. A, I like the logo, and I like the fact that they're blue. And anyway, but no, St. Louis is. I have an affinity for underdogs every year. Last year, I thought it was great that Las Vegas, the Golden Knights were there, and I was like, yeah, have them win. And Boston has won before. I'm a Montreal fan, so I can't root for the Bruins. Just can't do it. So St. Louis was the option, and the fact that they had never won a Stanley Cup in their existence, it made it kind of exciting and kind of compelling. Let's not forget that going into January, they were at the bottom of the league, almost dead last, if not dead last. And then they fire a coach, and suddenly they start winning. And what I found amusing is the interviews going into the series with the Bruins. They would talk to Berube, the coach, and they'd say, "And we have an interim head coach with us." And I'm like, interim? For Christ's sakes, he got to a Stanley Cup.
If he's not the head...
just give him a bloody contract. I mean, he took you from last to first, or last to a cup final. Like, just tell the media it's okay to call him head coach, because we're pretty sure we're going to hire him for next year. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think that winning the Stanley Cup would automatically get the interim off of your title,
or just getting to the Cup should have. I mean,
the
whole series. Even last night during the Stanley Cup final, they're like, interim head coach. I'm like, no. Make him head coach. Come on.
Yeah, and I told you before we went on there, I don't follow hockey that much. I follow the Hurricanes, and of course, the Hurricanes were one of those teams that kind of like the Blues had a turnaround season at the end of the year. Just got hot at the right time and made it. Unfortunately, ran into the Boston Bruins, and like I said, that was ugly. But hopefully, maybe the Hurricanes can keep that momentum going for next year.
Well, I got to say two things on that. First of all, the Hurricanes and the Blue Jackets, which I do like. I have shirts from both teams, actually. They kept my Montreal Canadiens out of the finals, and the Canadiens have gotten hot. I mean, they won like 7 of the last 10 or something. But both those teams, the Blue Jackets, Columbus, and the Hurricanes, just got hotter. So it was a little frustrating knowing that we weren't going to make the playoffs, despite the fact that we were playing some of the best hockey in the last month in the entire league, and but just not good enough. And the other thing I'll say is I'm glad that both those teams got in, because you need a changing of the guard. Every year when you go there and you see, it's the Rangers and the Maple Leafs, and you just go, stop it. Give me some fresh blood. So it was exciting to see the Golden Knights last year. It was exciting to see Columbus get past the second round. It was exciting to see the Hurricanes get passed around, and hopefully the NHL will rejig their playoff format so that we don't have these weird seedings where every year in the first round it's Toronto versus Boston. Every year in the first round it's Pittsburgh versus Columbus. It's like, all right, stop it now. Do an East-West split where the top 8 from the East make it and the top 8 from the West make it. I understand you can't do top 16 of the entire league because, if Montreal plays LA in the first round, well, just the flights alone are just gonna burn both teams. So you can't do. So I get you can't do that, but you can do a lot better than. Oh, hey, look, it's Toronto and Boston for the 8th season in a row. This is so not exciting. Stop it.
Yeah, I understand that. It's a lot of things with all of the sports organizations now that are, that I call into question a lot with playoff formats on some of these things. The NFL's, I think they've got it down, but like college football and college football still has a ways to go. I'm glad they got the playoff system now, but I think they need to expand it a little bit more because there's some teams out there that don't get a shot that deserve one. But maybe. Well, go ahead.
So I just sorry to cut you off, but NFL needs to expand. I mean, you're looking at 12 teams in a 32-team league, so you've got 20 teams that are sitting around after playing the season. I'm sorry, but that's not enough.
So you think they should do half?
Maybe half is too much because then the season doesn't mean anything. Right. Like everybody gets in, that doesn't mean anything. But it should at least be 8 teams in both, and maybe the top 2 get a bye or whatever it is, so that the numbers work out. But I think if we go to 16, well, yeah, you just said half, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, half.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my math was a lot. Listen, I don't do math.
Yeah, 16, I think that would work. 16, it would still make it worthwhile and make it meaningful. But I'm like, you get 8 from each from the AFC and the NFC, and I think you could have a good playoff system.
You really would, and I know folks are going to hate when I say this, but the whole division leader stuff gets in. Stop that. I mean, we've had division leaders that are 8-8. Getting in over teams that are 10-6, and it's just like, no, stop that. Let's just go to a conference model. In fact, all playoffs should just be a conference model where your top 6, your top 10, your top 12, whatever, get in, and let's just go with that. 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, because you want your champion to be the best of the best. You don't want your champion to have, oh, hey, we got in, but our opposition was an 8-8 team when the 10-6 teams were sent home. It's like, well, come on, stop.
Do you remember the 82 season, the strike shortened year, and they didn't call it a playoff, they called it a tournament, and they did pretty much what you said right then. They took, I believe it was 8 from each, the 8 best records from each division, or the AFC and the NFC, took the 8 best teams and put them in a tournament, just like that. And I enjoyed that. I mean, I know it was a strike-shortened season, but I enjoyed it. And actually, that was the year the Redskins won the Super Bowl, so you probably enjoyed that too. But inevitably it came down to, you had the Cowboys and the Redskins in the NFC Championship game, which I think were the top two teams that year in the NFC, and they played at RFK. So I mean, I think there was nothing wrong with that format.
Nothing at all, and that is the game that made me a Redskins fan, because I happened to have been a young buck at the time, and I was my mom had gone on not a field trip, a business trip.
Right.
So field trips are fun too. No, she had gone on a business trip and had taken me along because she couldn't just leave me sitting at home. So I actually got to watch the game at the Watergate Hotel in Washington.
Wow.
So you're in this sort of historic hotel for all the wrong reasons, watching an NFL game, and then the team wins and the city explodes. And so when you're in a championship city, whether it's basketball or football or hockey, and there's an excitement that's going to rub off on you. And so that's what made me a Redskins fan. I had been a Steelers fan through the 70s. And then, hey, Terry Bradshaw and Swan, and God bless them, they're great players. But that moment of being in a championship city with the cars honking and the people shouting, and it changes you, man. That made me a Redskins fan. And of course, through the 80s, early 90s, the Redskins were a decent team, a winning team. And then Dan Snyder bought it.
Yeah.
Jack Kent Cooke passed away, and Schneider took over, and he has really done his best to wreak havoc with the tradition and with the team, and just awful.
Yeah, I just look at him, and he's, I look at Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones came in before Snyder, and Snyder wanted to be Jerry Jones, but he's done a good job as Jerry Jones as far as putting his nose into everything, but he hasn't had the wins like Jerry Jones had. He didn't have that team like Jerry Jones had in the 90s with Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, and Troy Aikman and them. And it's sad. It's sad that they've got away from that tradition, because, I just remember watching, and I really do miss it. I'm a sports nut. I love watching all sports, but I miss the days when CBS on Sunday afternoons with Pat Summerall and John Madden, you watch the Red, and back in the 80s and early 90s, it was pretty much the Redskins, and around here it was the Redskins all the time. But, you just love watching, especially when they played the Cowboys. That rivalry back then was so great. And to see them, I just remember a game, I think it was in '83 at Texas Stadium. The Redskins just poured it on. I think they lost early in the year to the Cowboys. This was after they were the defending champions. They poured it on at Texas Stadium, and everybody remembers the Fun Bunch. And they were in the end zone getting ready to do the Fun Bunch, the little high five, and the Cowboys tried to get in the middle of it, and they still did it out. Like I said, my mom is a Redskins fan, so I'll pull for the Redskins unless they're playing the Steelers. That right there really made me dislike the Cowboys more than anything. I was like, why are they trying to stop something like that? I know they're embarrassed, but it was some great memories of the Redskins for me back then. I have a lot of good memories with the Redskins.
Yeah, and the Cowboys are embarrassing. We agree. So are the Giants. It's funny. I when I talk sports, I'll always pick against the Toronto teams, for example. And I had some guy write me a very angry email the other day and said, "You come to Toronto for all the shows and blah blah blah, and we never hear you bitching about that. But if you don't like the city, stay the fuck out." And it's just like, dude, it's that's what sports is. It's about busting balls. So when I say stuff about the Cowboys or I say stuff about the Giants, it's busting balls. It is not I hate New York. It is not I hate Dallas. It is not I hate you, the fan. So it's just funny. But having said that, holy Christ, the Cowboys suck. Oh.
And if nobody busts your balls, it wouldn't be half as fun. That's just
that's the whole thing.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing. There's a great joy to sitting in a room with a Cowboys fan and watch the Redskins beat them. Then you can jump all over them and say, ha ha. And of course, when you lose, you gotta sort of get under the blankets and go, oh Christ, here it is, it's coming. Just take it like a man. It'll be over soon until the next game. And you know, you just hope that we don't lose the 2 games in the regular season, because then it's torture.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought it was funny because as a Montrealer, I just can't root for Toronto teams. I could care less about the Raptors. I hope they lose. I hope the Maple Leafs lose. I hope the Argonauts lose. Anything that's Toronto sports, just lose. That doesn't mean I hate the city. It doesn't mean I hate the people.
That's
Stop
ridiculous.
it. I mean,
people get too butthurt these days about different things.
Oh my God.
It's ridiculous.
Oh,
it
you should have seen this email. It was full of anger, and maybe you should never come back to this city again. It was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't. Stop it.
Okay.
You know, go Golden State.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your stuff, your expertise, so music. Now, like I said on the intro, if I have, and I used to, you know, with sports and music back in the day, and maybe, I don't know if you picked I'm sure you did, before the internet, every month I looked forward to magazines, Circus and Hit Parader. I would pick them up and read them cover to cover. I used to love to read the liner notes of the, people remember CDs and tapes and vinyl records, and I would try to learn as much as I could. What got you started into music?
Wow, that's a good question. In general, listen, I lived in basically the country.
Yeah.
So there was no buses, there was no hustle and bustle, there was no 7-Eleven, there was nothing except crickets and raccoons and all that stuff. So there was a record player in the house, and I would see these records, and of course my parents had a lot of Beethoven and a lot of ABBA and a lot of, but I played them. You know, I had an appreciation for Beethoven's Fifth because, remember, back in the 70s, there wasn't 5,000 channels on TV, and you didn't have anything in your pocket that you could watch a movie on, So that was it. That was the entertainment. And then one day, my brother borrowed some Kiss records, Love Gun in particular, and I looked at the cover, sort of sitting there, propped up against the record player, the whole stereo system, and I was like, Then I pulled it open, and I saw the Kiss logo with the blood, and I went, oh, all right. And I don't remember my exact thoughts, but I'm sure they were something like, what the is this? And I put it on, and it drew me in, and then he started borrowing Double Platinum, and he started borrowing some Cheap Trick and some early Aerosmith. I remember live bootleg lying around, and I just started listening to those things, and I just liked my ears just liked it. Now, again, this is pre-MTV, pre-Much Music, pre-Shazam and Spotify, so you didn't have a lot to compare it to. It wasn't like I had 10,000 songs on my fingertips, so my ears grew to like those sounds from those bands, and then I moved off of that, and then the early '80s, I sort of got tired with the stuff, and Cheap Trick's album had become a little less interesting, and they lost Tom Peterson and Kiss, and The Elder was a disaster. So I turned to early Bryan Adams and Huey Lewis and what was that album by Rod Stewart, Camouflage, and so I turned into sort of more melodic rock, and then Bon Jovi hit with You Give Love a Bad Name, and I just remember I saw that video and I said, holy fuck, what is that? I need to buy that. And we literally drove to the mall and bought the cassette same day or next day. It was on sale for like $5.99, buy the new Bon Jovi, and that was it. And then from Bon Jovi was the Def Leppard and the Poison and the Cinderella and the this and the that, and so it really came out from a sense of boredom and isolation, like a lot of us who just sat around going, there's nothing to do. What the fuck am I doing? It's raining outside, it's snowing out. What am I going to do? Oh, okay, I'll listen to some music. I mean, that's, and I think that's why our generation, or my generation in particular, the over 40s have such an attachment to music, because it wasn't just something that played in the background. It was a life force. It was a life-saving force. It was it was your everything for a lot of people. Because, not everybody lives in a big city. Not everybody has a million things to do. There's a lot of us that just sat around and go, well, what am I going to do until, tomorrow comes? All right, I'll listen to this album.
It's
and
funny.
Well, the album finishes. You go, well, all right, I'll listen to it again.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned
all right, I'll listen to it again.
I live in a town. I moved back to the town I grew up in because I love it so much. But this town is like, I think we have maybe between 90 to 110 people in this town. And like you said, there's no hustle and bustle here. And I was pretty much the same way you are. I can remember my cousin playing Destroyer for me. And like you said, just seeing the album cover, you were like, and I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. And seeing the album cover, I was like, okay, wow. And then hearing it, especially, I think God of Thunder really hit me. And I was like, wow. And I was hooked, and I've been hooked ever since. They've had, like you said, they had their tough times with the Elder and, so forth. But, I've been a Kiss diehard since I was 5 years old. Even to the fact, I wish I hadn't done this, but playing a Live 2 on the record player, and I got the bright idea. I don't know if you've seen, and I'm sure you have, the white plastic toy guitar that came out in the 70s. The Kiss guitar? Yeah, I have one of those. I decided it was going to be a great idea to put a smoke bomb in it and do the guitar solo while playing the Live 2, the guitar solo on there. Yeah, it ended up with a big old hunk of melted plastic. I was like, wow, how stupid was I? But, it was just something to do. Like you said, you were looking for something to do. But and seeing the memories of Kiss in the past, I know I'm going on, but, it seemed like every year for Easter, that was my present, was the latest Kiss album. I've got pictures of me holding the Elder. Yeah, I do. And I have pictures of me holding, like, Unmasked, stuff like that. But that would seem to be every year that was my Easter present for a long time.
And it's funny, a lot of people say that what counts in music is the music. And it has its place, but it really isn't the most... I'll tell you this. I was judging a competition the other day at a local venue. They're having a battle of the bands to come play the summer festival up here called Heavy Montreal. And this one band showed up essentially in their street clothes, looking like, the plumber, the car mechanic. And when I criticized them, because it was sort of like an American Idol kind of panel, I'm like, if you're going to be a rock star, you got to look like a rock star. And they're like, oh, dude, it's all about the music. And I'm like, no, it's not. If you look at Judas Priest, if you look at Madonna, if you look at U2, they all have a look. Regardless of whether the look is makeup or shoes or sequins, there's a look. And as you and I can both state, when we saw the album covers, we didn't hear the music.
No.
We saw the look.
You saw the look.
And that's what drew us in. And folks sometimes seem to forget that music is also very visual. It's not just for the ears. It's for the eyes, too. And if you look like a band and sound like a band and play like a band, you're a band. But if you just play your guitar and you look like you've just changed my oil at Walmart, you're not. You're just not. And people say, well, look at grunge. But guess what? Look at all the grunge bands. Put them all side by side. They had a look. Guess what? They all had a look. It was all the same fucking look. So there's a look.
Yep, definitely. Now, I've heard this story, and I've seen your post on Facebook. Tell me, your first, am I right about this? First interview you ever did with Gene Simmons, and how old were you?
The Gene Simmons interview, I was 11 years old, my first one.
Wow.
And it was actually June 9th of 1980, so we are celebrating, what's that mess? 39 years. Oh, yeah. We're celebrating 39 years of that interview.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. An 11-year-old getting to interview Gene Simmons. At that time, I was 7 years old, so I would have been like, "Oh, how did that go though? How did that come about?"
It came about like all my interviews now come about. I had a great wherewithal. First of all, when I was 11 years old, I had been tagged as having a university level English language, so I was very good at speaking. So when you spoke to me on the phone, I sounded like an adult. So I pulled out, I'm trying to think, I think it was Dynasty, and on the back it said Ocoin Management. And of course, back in the day, if you wanted a phone number, you would dial 555, the area code, 212-555-1212, and say, hey, I'd like the number for Ocoin Management, which is exactly what I did. And the operator gave me the number, and I phoned the number. And of course, this is after Dynasty, before Unmasked comes out. The band is in disarray in terms of coverage. People don't really care anymore. It's sort of over. It was striking while the iron was hot in terms of them being unpopular, if you want. And I said, hey, I really would like to set up an interview for Canadian Broadcasting, yada, yada, yada. And they went, sure. I mean, that's it. That was it. I mean, it was a very different age. Now, if you want an interview, you have to talk to the publicist and the publicist assistant, and you've got to hop through this hoop and that hoop, and can you send me a detailed plan of the intended coverage? And it's just like, holy fuck, do you want me to talk to your band or don't you? If you do, let's set it up, and if you don't, piss off. But that wasn't it. Back then it was, hey, I'd like to talk to your band. And I went, okay. And I was like, huh. Now, and then I had to convince my mom. And I said, listen, I have an interview with KISS. And she went, yeah, sure you do.
Right.
I said, no, I have an interview with KISS set up in New York City. And they went, what? She went, what? And she said, okay, we'll go. And we did. And I got to meet Gene without the makeup over at Ocoin Management. And on my Facebook and on my Twitter, which is at Mitch LaFon, on June 9th this year, I put the old Polaroid picture. Now it's completely faded and stuff. You can't really see it, though. You can sort of make out where it says Ocoin. And I got to interview him. And you can go to YouTube and you can check out, Mitch LaFon, Gene Simmons, 1980 interview or something like that.
Oh, so it is on YouTube. I didn't know that. I have to definitely check that out.
Oh, yeah, you can hear it. And you hear my little voice, and I'm asking very normal questions. I'm not. I don't sound like an 11-year-old in terms of the language spoken. It's very on point, and I got some good answers. And Gene tries to throw me a couple of curveballs, and says, "Well, blah blah, Santa Claus." And I go, yeah, all right. And what about wearing shoes? And I go, yeah, all right. And it's a good little conversation. And that conversation gave me a little bit of reputation. I remember meeting Tracy Guns from LA Guns the first time, and I said, hey, I'm Mr. Blah, blah, blah. And 20 minutes of the conversation, he goes, wait a minute. Are you the guy that interviewed Gene when you were 11? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh. And so that led to other stuff, that led to me doing, eventually my own show that I control and that I program and that I host. And, it really has had a nice longevity for me, quite frankly.
Yeah, it has. I can remember, the first time, and actually I'm bringing up stuff from the past, the first time I actually heard you was when you were one of the co-hosts of Three Sides of the Coin. I used to watch that, and granted, I have not really paid much attention since you left. That's another story, but we won't go there. But, and then by
the way, and I don't mean to be an ass, but a lot of people, when they talk to me, say, I used to watch Three Sides. There's a lot of used to. There's not a lot of I still watch.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm just going to get my little... That's a snarky little dig, but, too bad. Can I swear here, by the way?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. And by the way, that's a good little, that's fine with me. Like I said, I used to watch it. And no offense to some of them there, but, I used to watch it. Did I hit, now I don't know if this is right or not, were you at the first concert Eric Carr played?
I was. July 25th, 1980. We did the interview with Gene in June, and he had mentioned, I'm trying to think, he mentioned it off the air, because I don't think it's in the interview, but he said, hey, there's a show coming up, yada yada. And we hemmed and hawed, my mom and I convinced her to go, and we ended up having to buy tickets from a scalper for like $30, and I just remember the look on my mom's face. I mean, $30 for a ticket in 1980 was highway robbery.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, because I think the actual ticket price was like $7.50 or $8, or I mean, I don't remember exactly, but it was definitely like under $10 kind of thing.
Right.
And we spent this money on these tickets, and she gave me the, you better, whatever it was, enjoy this, or you better be nice, or you better not give me any hassle, or whatever. Anyway, I was just like, yeah, whatever. And we went, and we were dead center row T. So what is that, like 20-some rows back?
Yeah, something like that.
Absolutely dead center, and it was spectacular. I remember the visual very clearly of the band on that small stage and in those things, and being fixated on Eric, and it was great. And every July 25th, as I will this year, I will on my Facebook and on my Twitter at Mitch LaFawn and on my Instagram, I will post a picture of the ticket that I went with it, and it's the actual ticket. It's not something that I Googled image. It is a picture that I took of my ticket, and I will repost it.
Yeah.
And it's great, and it's just funny because I had a sense very clearly that when that show took place, and I remember saying, Mom, it's going to be the first show with the new drummer. It's going to be something I'll remember for the rest of my life, and of course, we say that about so many things, my PlayStation or my Xbox or my ColecoVision or my whatever. And then, of course, time fades away. But this sort of has grown in myth and mystique over the years, and is like, yeah, I was there. Yeah. Damn straight. The Rockettes opened up.
Anyway. That was my favorite. He was my favorite member, and I love the original four. I love Ace. But he was my favorite member of Kiss, and just something I can remember hearing Creatures for the first time and hearing that drum sound, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is freaking awesome. Because they really didn't on the Elder. That was just a whole different story. But when they went back to the rock and let him play, those drums on Creatures were just freaking awesome.
Oh, they were, and I remember after. Well, I remember the disappointment of putting The Elder on for the first time and thinking, what the fuck's this crap? But when they came back with Creatures of the Night, I was like, oh my God, they're back. I mean, I happen to like Unmasked because I interviewed Gene for Unmasked, and he had given me a promo copy that I still have. And so the experience of that album is beyond the album. It's beyond the music. It's about the whole interview and the fact that the copy that I got to listen to was a promo copy handed to me by Gene Simmons when I was 11 years old. So you can tell me the Unmasked sucks all you want. It's like, no, not in my world. It doesn't.
That's right.
But listen, it was very poppy, and then The Elder was just brutally awful. And I still don't like that album.
I don't. It's not one of my favorites, but I don't dislike it as much as I used to. I just kept waiting for it. When I first got the album, and I was, music from The Elder, and I was like, huh. I said, well, when is the movie coming out? Because I just kept waiting for the movie, and you didn't have the internet back then, so you were like, when's the Elder movie coming out? But never made it to the light of day, I guess.
Yeah. That seems to be a path that they have. I remember back like in 2013, they had the History of Kiss movie that was done by Alan Parker Jr. or something, and that's never come out. But you know what? To be fair, a lot of bands have projects, and then the projects don't happen for whatever reason. There's no financing. There's no interest. There's no time. There's no,
Do you think now, with the End of the Road tour on, do you think Ace and Peter will ever make an appearance there?
I'm pretty convinced that Peter will not.
Right.
And I don't think it's anything to do with animosity. I think Peter just is very happily retired. I have contacted Peter through text, and I've asked about interviews and stuff, and well, Gigi answers actually, been very gracious, and it's just like, he's out of the biz. So I don't think we see Peter come back. I was very hopeful that Ace was going to come back for guest appearances, not come back for good. Tommy earned a spot, but the more I see Ace talk in the media and the more I read the clickbait headlines and the more I see all this, it's just like, dude, you're just shooting yourself in the foot day after day after day after day. I mean, if you want to be back in the band, you got to be more gracious. You got to be more diplomatic. Not, hey, you can't sell Madison Square Garden if I'm not there. Hey, the fans, well, it's like, dude, that trying to fight your way in is not going to get you in.
Especially with Gene and
Paul.
So,
yeah, I think that when we get to the final show, which I'm expecting will be at Madison Square Garden, we're going to end it where we started, or we're going to end it in our hometown arena. I think when we get to that, Ace will come out and probably jam on a rock and roll all night, but I just don't see him anywhere near the tour until the very last day and probably the very last song, because he's just talked himself out of it.
Yeah.
He's just said some incredibly silly things.
Yeah, he has definitely done that. Do you think, and I mean, I know this is your bread and butter, a lot of these, especially Gene said it before, is rock music dead?
No, I don't think rock music is dead. I think rock music has reached that point of being like jazz music. If you look back in the 20s and 30s, there was the jazz age, and everything was jazz, and then there was big bands, and then there was rockabilly, and then there was the blues, and there was all these other musical things that took over, and the Beatles, and the Stones, and the Elvis, and the Led Zeppelins, and that all took over. But jazz was always there in the background, and now, there's the Montreal Jazz Festival, and there's the New Orleans Jazz Festival, and there's this Jazz Festival. I think rock, or at least the rock that we know and like, is sort of the new jazz. It'll always be there. And if you look at the touring schedule every year, your Journeys are out there, your Foreigners are out there, your Whitesnakes, your Kisses. So there's a great resurgence in all those sort of older rock bands, and in the next 5 to 10 years when they start dropping off, and they will, the Stones can't tour until they're 100.
No.
So we are in that twilight, but I think eventually, instead of having, or not just having like the Montreal Jazz Festival, I think we'll have the Montreal Jazz Festival, and then we'll have the Blues Festival, and then we'll have the Rock Festival. And I think the music will exist, but just, so, I mean, I think the question, or what Gene was saying, is that, is rock commercially viable like it was in the 1980s? No. Will it always exist? Yes, of course it'll always exist. It just won't exist like it did in 1986. Just like jazz doesn't exist like it did in 1927. So, but no music will ever die. No music is extinct. I mean, people still play Beethoven.
Yep.
And classical music certainly died 500 years ago. And, the scene, stuff doesn't die. It just morphs and it just becomes different.
Yeah, and I'm actually talking about resurgence, and I think I mentioned to you, actually going to see Stryper is coming to a local theater about 30. Usually if I go to a concert, it has to be at least an hour and a half away, but there's a little theater that's about 30 minutes away, and a couple months ago they announced Stryper was coming, and I jumped right on the ticket. So, hopefully I'm going to see a good show. I'm sure I will. I've been watching the set list. They're kind of getting away from some of their bigger hits on this tour, but, I did see there was a Kiss cover song they've been playing, and I hope I'll see a good show Saturday night with Stryper. I'm sure I will.
Yeah, and they've also been doing a Firehouse cover. They've been doing All She Wrote.
Yeah, All She Wrote. They did a Judas Priest cover.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, and just to have a hair band come around close to this area, an older hair band, I guess I could say now, but it's great, and I hope it's a sign of things to come for that theater now. Got to talk about, this is one of my favorite guys in music, probably one of the hardest working guys in music. I can remember seeing him first with Dokken, but Jeff Pilson, what, is he not? I know you've had some interviews with him. You're a couple of times, a few times. Is he not a great guy or what?
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I'm friends with Jeff, and he's even worn my Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon shirt in what do you call them? Meet and greet photos. If you go to the Foreigner archiver where they have the meet and greet photos, you see Jeff wearing my shirt in a few of them, which is kind of cute.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, and of course, I'm going to throw in a gratuitous plug. If you want your own Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon shirt, because they are available.
I've actually
head
got
over
one
to
already.
Loud. Yeah, you got to head over to Loud Tracks, TRAX.com/Mitch. The pricing that you'll see there is in Canadian, so one shirt is $20. So in American, you're taking off 30%, so it's like $12 or $13 for somebody in the States. And it is the shirts are made by Global Merchandising. They handle all the official merch for Iron Maiden, for Judas Priest, for AC/DC, for all the big bands. So the shirt quality is absolutely where it needs to be. And the logo was designed by Claudio Bergamin, who designed the Judas Priest Firepower album cover. So
wow.
It's a cool logo. It's a great quality shirt. It's not this fly-by-night bootleggy, cheapy crap. It's official merch done with an official logo, or a professional. It's great. So anyway, so that said, Jeff is just a sweetheart. I mean, whatever you need, Jeff is there. He's always been exceptionally accommodating, having me out to shows. He's always been exceptionally accommodating with interview requests, and every so often I'll get a request from a band guy, or they'll say, "Hey, I need to get in contact with Mick Jones, or I need to get in contact with this. Can you help me out?" And I'll send it over to Jeff and say, "Listen, so-and-so from whatever band or from whatever management company needs to get a message. Can you help out?" And he's just always, you can't be nicer. And he's a multi-instrumentalist. I mean, he can play bass, he can play guitar, he can do keyboards, he can work a board, he can produce, he can mix, he can master. I mean, he's a nice guy who's a jack of all trades, and you can't complain with Jeff. So yeah, I've had a personal friendship with him for many years. I'm trying to think. Sometime back in, it must have been 2002. He had what was that band called? Underground Moon, I think the band, something like that. And they had a press release day in Los Angeles, and he invited me out to it and took care of stuff. And Jeff's a sweetheart.
Yeah,
you gotta love Jeff. He's the sane one in Dokken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he definitely is. I was going to ask, do we ever see a full-fledged Dokken reunion again? I know they're talking. I know Mick Brown is I think he's staying away. I don't know if Jeff is in or not. I did hear George Lynch was out now because of some kind of, I don't know if he was sick or what, but is there a Dokken reunion in the future?
At this point, I don't think so. They were supposed to all play together at M3 in the beginning of May. Mick and George, but George got sick, and he didn't just skip out on that show. He canceled like 3 or 4 shows, basically an entire week of shows that he canceled. So it didn't happen, and I guess because George wasn't going to be there, Mick didn't show up. And Mick, if you've been following, hasn't played any shows really with the band in 2019. From what I understand, he has an injury that he's dealing with and can't really play at a level of a rock drummer. And he announced the other day that he's retired, and I sent him an email, and I said, "Hey, do you want to do an interview?" And he said, "No, man, I'm retired."
Okay.
So I think we're done. I think, and Foreigner is wrapping up. They haven't announced a farewell tour or anything like that, so I don't want to mislead anybody.
Right.
But Mick Jones isn't 15.
No.
So I don't know if the band has decided to continue as Foreigner after Mick steps away, but I think we're down to our last 3 to 5 years of Mick Jones touring, which potentially could mean we're down to our last 3 to 5 years of Foreigner. Maybe. I'm not making any decisions. The bands will announce what the band needs to announce, but the point being is I think they're just trying to get in a lot of Foreigner work before that happens.
Right.
And so I just don't think Jeff will be available. Now, again, this is all niche opinion.
Right.
None of it is based on fact. None of it is based. This is what I feel is happening. And, Jeff and Mick and Foreigner and management and all that, they will give you official news when there's official news. I'm just sharing opinion.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't think Foreigner could be Foreigner without Lou Gramm singing, but I will say Kelly Hansen has he hasn't let anybody down as far as Foreigner goes. I can remember back in the day, buying, and I don't know why I even bought it, but buying Hurricane CD and just playing the heck out of that. That was one of the great CDs. And people, I was like, who is Hurricane? I was like, you guys got to listen to this guy. This guy can freaking sing. And I just think I'm just a big Kelly Hansen fan. And to see them remake I Want to Know What Love Is and do it for the charity they did it for, that was just a class act by Foreigner.
Oh, it absolutely was. So, good on Foreigner, good on Kelly Hansen, and I'm just glad that it's still going on. They're great live. I mean, they're just fantastic live. And they're doing a few more shows coming up end of September, early October with Lou Gramm and the Double Vision lineup, so I can't wait.
Right. Okay, speaking of reunions, you think there's going to, I know Sebastian has invited all the Skid Row guys to come back for this. He's going to do the first Skid Row album and in its entirety on tour. I did see, I think one guy said, I'll be there. You think we're going to see a Skid Row reunion?
Sorry. No, absolutely not. I think there's way too much animus in the air for that to ever happen. I know Rob Affuso has said that, count him in. And I'm sure that Rob will probably come out and play a couple of tunes here and there. I don't think he's going to join. What's his name? Sebastian, sorry, has his band that he's been touring with, and I don't think he's just going to fire the drummer all of a sudden. Right. I don't think that would be fair, but I do think Rob will probably come in and sit in at a New York date or at a Syracuse date or at a whatever date where they might be. But I don't see the other guys. Maybe potentially Scotty Hill could be convinced if he's in the right city at the right time. I just don't see anybody else wanting to do it.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. They have left, I'm assuming, a lot of money on the table by not doing it. But, at the end of the day, Skid Row really wasn't a North American arena act. So if you're going to get the lawyers involved and sign a contract and put together a reunion tour, and then you're playing, 1,500 seaters, is it really worth it?
Yes, good point.
I love the fact that Skid Row would get back together. I think it's a great tour. I love the music. I love the band. I'm not being disparaging at all. But those of you who are calling for a reunion, do you really think it's going to be playing Madison Square Garden?
No.
And if we're objective about it, I think the answer is no. It'll probably do, the Best Buy or, the Best Buy, which I think is closed anyway. Up here we have one called the M-Telus, which is 2,000 people. Do you really set out on a reunion tour to play to 1,500? No. I'm not really sure it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, when you're talking a reunion tour of KISS and you go from playing, a Civic Center of 7,000 to playing Madison Square Garden, you go, yeah, okay. that makes sense. When you think of any other band doing a reunion tour and they step it up, you go, right, makes sense. But when you're going from a club act to being a club act, well, not really sure it's worth it.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I have taken up so much of your time, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. I could talk to you all night about this stuff. I love talking music, and I love talking sports, but, like I said, guys, this is the expert on rock music right here. If I have any questions, I go to him. And if you want to check out Mitch Lafon, all right, let's talk about your podcast. Where can they find your podcast at?
Okay, so let's go through this wonderful list. Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon is hosted on Omni, which is one of the providers, and of course it's fed to Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Google Play, Amazon Alexa, Spotify, iHeart. So if you go to iHeartRadio and you look at or you get the app on the phone, you just type in Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, Stitcher, TuneIn, and yes, I have, now that I'm completely independent, I've been throwing up all the episodes on YouTube. So if you can't catch it on a podcast provider, you can certainly go to YouTube. You just type in Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. The page will come up, and you'll hear the exact same show. I don't edit versions for different outlets or different platforms. The show is the show is the show. And, folks, this week I've had Billy Duffy of The Cult. I've had Corey Glover of Living Colour. I've had Jeff Tate of formerly of Queensryche. Right. I've had Melissa Etheridge. And that's another thing that if you check out the show, it's not just here's Warrant, here's Poison, here's Warrant, here's Poison, here's Pretty Boy Floyd. I do sometimes step out of the box. I've been doing a lot of songwriters. Desmond Child, who wrote Living on a Prayer, I've had on recently. Jim Valance, who wrote Summer of '69, I've had on recently. Holly Knight, who wrote a whole bunch of songs with Kiss and others, I've had on recently. Even last year I had on Boy George. And I really don't care if fans complain about guests or what. I love having a chance to talk to all these different people. I've had Simple Minds on, I've had Cyndi Lauper on. Like I said, this week, Melissa Etheridge. So if you like a wide palette of music, do check out the show. I think you'll find something for you in there at some point, and, I think you'll dig it.
Yeah, I can honestly say, and just looking every week at who you've had on there, I've not seen or listened to a bad show yet. There's, I listen to all sorts of things. I'm not just hair bands. Like, I like Bryan Adams. I love Bryan Adams. And all his songs from the 80s, and even now, his latest release. I like Bryan Adams. I don't have a problem with pop rock. I don't have a problem with hard rock. Some of the dark metal rock I don't listen to, but
I'm not a dark metal guy.
To each his own, but the guys this guy has, that Mitch has on his show, I can promise you, I find out something I didn't know every time I listen to one of your interviews, and that's what I look for in an interview too. When I interview somebody, if they tell me something I didn't know, I'm like, wow, that really made that interview worthwhile.
It really did, and I'll tell you something, just real quick, you can also check out the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Rock Talk Mitch Lafon, Lafon, but the important thing is, the way I look at it is, especially some of us older folks, when we were growing up watching Much Music in Canada or MTV, we didn't have remotes like we had back then. You actually had to stand up and go change the channel, or you had so a lot of us, we would, or at least I know in my experience, I would tune it to Much Music, and then if there was a band I didn't like, I just left it on and figured, okay, well, in 3 minutes, so hopefully they'll play something I like. And so that's why I've had a chance to hear songs from Culture Club, and hear songs from Simple Minds, and hear songs from, and then as you got older, you go, hey, you know what? Don't You Forget About Me. It's a pretty damn good song. I didn't like it back in high school, but
it's pretty good.
And that's why, yeah, it's pretty good. So that's why I have that wide variety of guests, because I think a lot of us had the same experience. And yes, we didn't run out and buy new Duran Duran albums necessarily, But, 30 years later, if you're interviewing the guy from Duran Duran, I think you can sit there and go, yeah, okay, well, let me see what this guy's been up to, sure. And listen, I've also had Paul Stanley on recently. I've had Vinnie Vincent on recently. I've had Gene Simmons on recently. Speaking of Bryan Adams, I was talking to his drummer, Mickey Curry, just yesterday. On July 2nd, we are going to do an interview together, which I will have out, I would imagine, a week or two later. So sometime in July, there'll be an interview with Brian's drummer, and people go, oh, Brian's drummer. Let's not forget Brian's drummer was Hall & Oates' drummer for a long time.
Hall & Oates, I love Hall & Oates.
Yeah. And the Cult, the Cult have an album out called Sonic Temple, celebrating 30 years this year, right? Came out in 1989. Well, guess who played on Sonic Temple? It's Mickey Curry. So yes, he's Bryan Adams' drummer, but he's played on Cuts Like a Knife. He's played on Sonic Temple. He's played on the Hall & Oates stuff. So you can listen to that interview and not just be, oh, it's one color. He's painting just in blue. No. He's done all these other bands, hard rock bands, and pop bands, and you'll see. It'll be a fun interview, and so, just put in Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon in your Google or whatever, and choose whatever platform you want, from Stitcher to Apple to Spotify. I'm on Spotify as well. Easy to find everywhere, and at Mitch Lafon, all in lowercase letters on Twitter, at Mitch_Lafon on Instagram. And, easy to find, happy to talk to people. People send me emails and tweets and instant messages all the time, and I answer every single one, and I answer them all personally. I don't have a staff of writers, and it's not my daughter. It's me.
Yeah, I can honestly say I haven't sent you a message yet that you haven't answered back. So, it was pretty, the first time I sent one, I said, well, he may not answer back, but it wasn't long that you answered back, and ever since then, it's been like, I said, let me ask him what he thinks about this, and you pretty much, every time, sometimes it takes a little while, and I know you're a busy man, but you always answer back. But, you talk... I do.
The problem with some of the messages is on Facebook. That one really sort of bugs me, just because the way their mailbox is organized, they just stack up. So if you get 15 messages in a day,
you might not see them all.
That 15th one is down at the bottom, and then if I reply, I don't know if you ever noticed, but if you reply to Facebook, it puts that message back on top, right? Because now you've replied to it, so it jams the other ones even further down. I mean, I've had sometimes where I'll meet somebody and they'll say, hey man, you didn't answer my message. And I'll go, you never fucking said. And then I'll scroll through the Facebook and I'll say, look at that, a month ago. So Facebook is really awful for that, honestly. On Twitter, if you go to the Twitter and send me a direct message, which I've opened up for everybody, that's very easy to see. Instagram, honestly, I don't check those messages very often just because I'm not really an Instagram kind of dude.
Right.
But yeah, if you hit me up on Facebook, if it does take more than a week, it's usually because I've had a lot come in,
right,
and it just got, because they really need to redesign the mailbox to look more like Gmail or something, because it just doesn't work in that little sort of side panel-y view that you get.
Yeah. You talked about the drummer playing for all these different guys. That's one thing I miss about CDs, cassettes, and albums. The liner notes were so important to me. And, I miss the days where you could go out and buy a CD or a cassette. Because like I said, when I got one, that would be the first thing I'd do. I'd put it on and I'd start reading the liner notes. And you find out more stuff about that, about, guys that played in their background singers and stuff like that. But, yeah, I just miss the days of records and tapes and CDs. But, yeah, it looks like it's a dead thing now. I still collect my Kiss vinyl, and I've got, believe it or not, and I have one Bay City Rollers album. I was a big Bay City Rollers fan back then.
Well, who wasn't, right? What was that song? Saturday Night or something?
Saturday Night. SATURDAY Night. Yeah. Love the Bay City Rollers. But
I know my stuff. I actually almost set up an interview with them last year. They
now that would be cool.
one of the original members was setting stuff up, and it just came to me at a time where I had like too many done, and I was just like, okay, I can't really justify this, but I wish I had done it. But I will do that on the show. I will pick people that I just think are cool just because I think they're cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, there you go.
All right.
So,
well,
there we go.
Look,
we got it all.
Yeah. I appreciate this so much. It has been great. Like I said, I could talk to you all night about this stuff. I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much, guys. Check out Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon. Check him out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and get a Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon shirt. I've got mine ordered on the way. I'll be showing it on my Facebook page when I get it. Mr. LaFon, thank you so much. Yeah. It's been a great honor, a great pleasure to be able to talk to you tonight. Yeah, I'll probably be aggravating you with some more questions later on, but I appreciate you. I really appreciate you. Appreciate what you do, because that's where I go to find out my rock news. Right there is Mitch LaFon.
Yeah, and thank you for the kind words, and yeah, enjoy the T-shirt, and you'll see when you get it. I'm not kidding. It is a high quality shirt because it is made by the same people that make you the Iron Maiden shirts and the Judas Priest shirts and all those other bands. It's the real deal, folks.
Right.
And thank you for supporting.
No doubt.
You know,
yeah, I'll be there as long as I can. I'll be supporting you, and I'll be checking out Rock Talk with Mitch LaFon every week.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Mr. LaFon. Guys, Mitch LaFon, that's the final score.